like everyone to stand up, look outside, think of the river, think of the bay that's so close to our campus. You don't have to stand up. If the sea level were to rise 2 feet from where it is now, the river will overflow as well as the saltwater pond, and we won't have a dock. If the sea level were to rise 6 feet, it's a bit taller than we all are right now, the soccer fields will become marshland. If the sea level were to rise 10 feet, if you're standing on the front porch of Hopelands, you'll be up to your ankles in water. And finally, if and when the sea level rises 15 feet, the entire Rocky Hill campus will be underwater. Here's a map of the peninsula. Here's a zoomed-in picture of the campus. You'll see, that's the upper school right there. Everything that's in blue is underwater. Now, right now you're probably thinking this is a problem, and it is. It's a big one. When the sea level rises even a couple feet, it'll plunge the world into an absolute catastrophe, the likes of which has never been seen in the course of human history. It is unthinkable, but what's more unthinkable is that this will happen. It will happen, probably within our lifetime. And it's our fault. Due to climate change and global warming as a result of human ignorance and pollution, the Earth is melting. I'm Zack and I will be presenting on the inevitability of the sea level rise and global warming and the melting of the polar ice caps. You don't need to clap. Now, you've all heard about global warming and climate change, I'm sure. And I'm also sure you understand that it's a big issue, as I've just said. It's a huge one. So, in the short time I have today, I'll only be covering a small part of it in detail. There are an innumerable amount of sources and websites and studies that you can look at on the internet for more information if you're still curious. Now, we know this is happening, but there are those of us still out there too stubborn to admit it. But the thing is, the proof is out there. And for them, I'll show it to you. Start with the obvious one, the Global Land-Ocean Temperature Index. This is a measure of how the difference in temperature each year since 1880, the year was globally from the average. If you look, 17 out of 18 of the warmest years in recorded history have happened after 2001, the exception being 1998, which is right there. And the warmest year was 2016, which was 0.99 degrees Celsius above the average. Now, that might seem like a small number, but here's what it means. The ocean has absorbed 80% of the heat resulting from global warming. And this melts the polar ice caps faster and faster, as you can see. This is a measure of the Antarctica mass variation since 2002. And by this graph, it has been losing an average of 127 gigatons per year. That is a massive amount. Here is a graph of the average September extent of the Arctic ice sheet. September is the month and time of year where the ice sheet is the smallest. And as you can see, it's getting smaller by the year. Here's a visualization of that. These three are measures of 50-year increments from 1850 to 1900, 1901 to 1950, 1951 to 2000, and just 13 years. This is the difference. There's a GIF of that I found. It's pretty nice. Now, this may, to some, seem like a linear issue. I'll go back so it's not distracting. These graphs are sort of moving at a linear, constant rate. Here is a graph of the sea level rise since before 1995, at a rate of 3.2 millimeters per year. Global warming is natural, right? It's happened before. And we've also gone down in temperature before, the ice ages. Well, let's look at one of the most well-known greenhouse gases publicly, carbon dioxide. Here is a measure of carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere since the time we could measure, about 400,000 years ago. What's ironic is that this data was collected using cores from ice sheets like the Antarctic, which may soon disappear entirely. Here is the highest historical carbon dioxide level that has ever been measured. Here's where we are right now. That's not normal. And here's who's responsible. If you look, the United States is one of the leading producers of carbon dioxide, followed by China, Russia, United Kingdom, Germany. And here also is the sea level rise by century, starting with the first. The sea level has already risen 4 to 8 inches in the past 100 years or so. So what will this mean? In the interest of time, I won't go too much into the cataclysmic destruction that will come to pass for ecosystems, biodiversity, and species other than humans as a whole in the near future. I'll just say for now that the 6th mass extinction is fast approaching. Putting aside what the greenhouse gases and global warming will cause alone, let's focus on the ramifications of a rising sea level. That is my topic after all. A prominent and distinguished study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States predicts that if humans do nothing to help the environment, sea levels could rise over 4 feet within the century. Even if we do everything we can and the aims of the Paris Agreement are reached to the fullest, which the main goal of the Paris Agreement was to keep the global temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius. Here's who's agreed to this. If you'll notice, the United States is one of 3 that is not part of this agreement. Syria is in the midst of a civil war, so really couldn't participate. And Nicaragua believed that the agreement was too lax, that it wasn't doing enough, so they were out too. Even North Korea joined. This doesn't even include the possibility of the Antarctic sheet or the Greenland ice sheet collapsing. And the West Antarctic sheet alone, if it broke up into the water, would cause a sea level rise of over 20 feet. There's 2 different sheets in the Antarctic. One of them is decreasing more than the other. Goodbye, Rocky Hill School. What's worse, about 40% of the population of the world's population lives within 100 kilometers of the coast. That's the distance from Rocky Hill to Boston. As of 2007. Even an increase of just 2 feet will trigger intense erosion, damage to structures, a huge increase in the severity, frequency, brutality, and injuriousness of storms such as hurricanes, magnified by global warming, just all-around devastation. Billions of people, many of them living in impoverished areas and developing countries, as well as critical coastal cities like New York, Mumbai, Miami, Osaka, Boston, Ho Chi Minh City, New Orleans, and countless others are at risk of homelessness and destruction as a result. There's no telling what ruin this will cause to mankind. Nations will begin to falter, and along with every other consequence of our idiocy, including the death and extinction of many pollinators, which could cause a global famine, the likes of which, again, has never been seen. If we don't take action now, we shall see the despoliation, that means the destruction, of the human race that could well lead us to our own extinction. On that morbid note, what can we as individuals do to help? Well, we could do a few things. We could encourage legislation that will help us step in the right direction. I mean, we're one of 3 countries that has pulled out of the Paris Accords, and that can obviously change. Find renewable energy sources. Conserve energy by buying better light bulbs, keeping them off. Conserving water, which actually is something that many people don't think about. And it's also a leading contributor to energy loss that could be easily averted. Maintain your cars. Inflated tires can cause, I think, if the entire United States, everyone who owns a car, if they all kept their tires inflated, could cause a saving of 1.2 billion gallons of gas in a year. And finally, eat less meat. Now, that may sound difficult for some of you, but surprisingly, the livestock industry is one of the largest contributors to global warming. Cows, one cow produces 100 times as many methane in a year as a human does. And methane is a far more potent gas than carbon dioxide. To conclude, there's an apocalypse on the horizon. If we sit latent, that will arrive. The Earth is melting, and we may yet just melt with it. Thank you.